Hello, I'm Jack and this is Entertainment World, and today I will be ranking all 10 Saw films. This is my first video I've done for like the October Halloween season. Always thought it's something I've wanted to do with this channel when it got round to that time of the year, to actually have a video really themed for that month, but I've never actually really done that. But it's something I've always wanted to do, and it's something I will be continuing doing in future. So next October, next Halloween, I will be making more horror themed videos. And not only that, I intend to make more than, just one video for that month. Next year and the year after and so on and so forth, I intend to be making quite a few videos for the October Halloween season. It's just, unfortunately for this month, this is the only one I can do, for that time of the year. For this time of the year, sorry. And I know that I have a lot of other videos I'm saying I'm going to make for ages now, and I will be doing them after this one. It's just that I've had a much busier time this last couple months than I thought I was going to. Certainly much more than I thought I was going to be. That's why my previous video took a lot longer to come out than I thought it would. And it was a lot more difficult to be able to edit it than I thought it would be as well. Which is very frustrating, as people who have maybe watched my previous videos know I did take a break for a while and didn't really film anything, and then wanted to come back, and I was going to be coming back, and then it's just really frustrating that this last couple months have been a lot busier than I would have liked them to be as well. But anyway, I've been making this video now. Saw X has come out. It came out on my birthday, actually. I didn't go to see it on my birthday, but I did go to see it shortly afterwards, and I have seen it twice now. It will be included in this video. I'll be ranking all 10 of them. I'll be giving little reviews for each one. I won't be going, full deep dive into each one, otherwise this video would be hours long, and I don't really want that to be the case, and obviously you wouldn't want to watch that either. And the reason why I'm doing it here, like one big ranking video, is because for a few of them, not all of them, but there are a few of them where I don't really have enough to say about each. For a few of them, not all of them, but there's a few of them where I don't really have enough to say to make them their own video. It would just be sort of me being like, saying a few things and that'd be it. And I certainly don't think that would make a very interesting video by itself. So I feel like this is the best way to deal with this franchise, if you want to word it like that. I know this franchise is controversial in that some people absolutely loathe it, some people absolutely love it, some people, like the first one, hate all the sequels, some people like the first one, like some of the sequels, but hate some of the other ones. I feel like you could ask 10 different people who have watched this franchise, what's your opinion on it, and get 10 quite different answers, with very altering opinions on certain films in this franchise. This is my opinion on it, obviously. There's no film in this franchise that I hate. Some people, like I said, hate certain ones. I don't. There's none of these films that offend me, piss me off, make me really angry. There's certainly films in here which I think are a lot worse than other ones. There's certain ones I think are really good. Others are like whatever. But I can't say I hate them, nor can I say this is the worst horror franchise ever made, which is what a lot of other people say, considering how many horror franchises are absolutely terrible, and how many horror franchises have absolutely god-awful films in them. I can't say the worst Saw film is worse than the worst Nightmare on Elm Street film. Same with Texas Chainsaw. Same with Friday the 13th. Same with Halloween. I can't honestly say that. I can't, and I mean that. I genuinely cannot say the worst film of this franchise is worse than the worst films of those franchises, because the worst films in those franchises are genuinely what is this even meant to be? So there you are, just getting that out of the way quickly. And last thing before I start going into this video properly and ranking them all, I really actually recommend Saw 0.5, and a lot of people don't actually know what that is. And if you've watched the Saw films and you've never heard of it, or even if you've just watched the first one and enjoyed it and are watching this, I recommend Saw 0.5. And what that is a short film made by James Wan and Leigh Whannell, who made the first film and created the franchise. It's a short film they made before making that very first film, and it's the film I believe they gave to producers. I know it was made to promote like this idea as a feature length film. I'm not sure how the process about that went though to it becoming a feature length film, but it's the short film they made that they then gave to producers to say, you know, I believe so, gave to producers to say, look, what do you think of this? What do you think of this concept? Can we make it into an actual film? They said yes. Gave them a low budget, and anyway, they then made Saw, which went on to create one of the biggest horror franchises ever made. So obviously it worked. Anyway, I recommend it, and a lot of people don't know about it. And if you own Saw on Blu-ray, I think it's on there in the special features. Certainly in the box set that I own. If not, you can YouTube it. Like I said, I certainly recommend it if you haven't seen it, just to basically see the very first piece of this franchise, the very first part of this, the history of this franchise. It's just like a really nice little companion piece, and being able to see the blueprint for what the first film was and then what the franchise later became is just really interesting to me. So I really do recommend it. Leigh Whannell is in it. It shows Billy the Puppet for the first time, shows the reverse bear trap for the first time. The scene was then later remade, replacing Leigh Whannell's character in it with Amanda, who obviously is a huge part of the franchise. So yeah, I just recommend it as a nice little thing to see, to just see the seed that was planted, which then grew into what Saw later became. Last thing, very quickly, is I will be talking about each film, ranking it with the assumption that you've seen it. There will be spoilers, obviously, but also because I don't want to go into a deep dive into each film and each flaw and each positive. I'm not going to talk about it to you as if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm assuming you have watched it, so I just wanted you to know that before obviously clicking on the video, because I don't want to spoil things for you, especially if it is something you're interested in diving into. Obviously you're very much more than welcome to come back to this video afterwards, and I would appreciate it if you did do that. However, I don't want to spoil it for you, and I don't want you to think, oh well, I don't need to watch it because he's going to explain everything to me, because I'm not going to do that with each one. So anyway, I just wanted to say that really quickly. Again, last thing, sorry, before I go into the video properly, I still haven't been able to have my curtain situation sorted properly, so I'm sorry about the light situation. I don't know if it will be affected negatively or not. I won't be able to check until I'm editing the video, and so if that is the case, I apologise for that. Anyway, so I will now be going into ranking them. And last place, number 10, is unfortunately for this film, Saw 5.
Have you learned enough to trust me?
And the reason it's here at the bottom is because there's nothing really worth remembering about it. You look at all the other Saw films, and there's usually one memorable thing, be it a character, be it a twist, be it a backstory revelation, be it a trap, be it just a scene in general. There's usually something that makes you go, okay, that one, that's quite cool. This one has very, like, almost nothing aside from maybe the ending with Strahm. Now, the things I like about it, like the ending with Strahm, obviously is a memorable ending, and is, well, the only memorable thing, so I should say, about this film is that last scene where, the wolves come in and close on Strahm. So, obviously, the ending with Strahm, that's the positive, and I do like how, the whole story with Mark Hoffman's backstory about how he became a Jigsaw apprentice, the whole thing with Seth Baxter, where he, killed him and made it look like a jigsaw trap, and just seeing how, Strahm figures that out, goes after him, and then obviously the ending of that film is the best part of it. This is, a lot of the Saw sequels did this thing where 50% of the film is the game, them in the traps or whatever they're doing with that, depending on which film it is, and 50% of it is this, like, police drama with finding who the other Jigsaw apprentice is, and then once you find out it's Mark Hoffman, it's him trying to keep that a secret, all the while backstories and flashbacks and things like that are spliced into each scene. So this film obviously is very much that with Strahm and the Hoffman story, and then you got the game. The game is by far the least interesting as far as I'm concerned out of all of them. It doesn't really have a twist. It's just more like you didn't really pay attention with the whole they could have all lived, and each more than one person could have fit in the bunker holes to protect them from the nail bombs. More than the keys for the collared ones at the start could have worked on any of them. They could have all just had a little bit of an electric shock, and then obviously there's the whole handsaw pints of blood thing at the end. And it's the same with the ending as well. It's not with Hoffman and Strahm. There's no twist. Obviously, these franchises are very famous for the twist, and then the Hello Zepp theme plays, and this very famous for that, and each film does that. But this one doesn't really have a twist. It's more just a game of people not paying attention, and Strahm not getting in the box when Hoffman told him to. So there's no real, like, oh my god, like, at this point Hoffman is Jigsaw's apprentice. You learn his backstory through this film, and that's the interesting part. And obviously the scene with Strahm when the walls close in is iconic for the franchise, but there isn't really a oh shit moment. It's just like, well, you were told to ignore your instincts with the traps, and then it's the same with Strahm was like, ignore your instincts, get in the box, and he doesn't get in the box, he throws Hoffman in it. So Hoffman's like, okay, and then gets lowered into the ground, and then the walls close and kill Strahm. And that's just the end of the film. Doesn't really have anything to say. I wouldn't call any of the traps that memorable apart from the wall thing. Probably the most other famous part of this film is the Seth Baxter trap, where I think it's called the pendulum, but at the same time it is a bit silly that Mark made that before becoming Jigsaw's apprentice, because it's like, how did he make that by himself? Like, what is his backstory of engineering? I know he's pretty good at it, obviously, because he goes on to continue John's work afterwards, but still, it is just a very, I don't know, thing that he made that like that. It doesn't, like, completely take me out of it, but still, it's just like, it doesn't work for me in terms of, like, it's not as cool as I think they thought it was when they were making it, because it leaves me with, like, okay, well, how did Hoffman make that sort of feeling? And I don't know. This film for me is just bland. There's nothing to say. There's nothing I really like about it. I also think the acting by the people in the game. I don't like knocking acting. I don't like criticising acting because I know it's very difficult, and to put yourself out there like that, I wouldn't, even if they were paid lots of money, which I'm assuming they weren't because they're not famous people. At least I don't think they are, and obviously these films are quite low budget, so I don't think this is the Making You Millions franchise for actors. For producers, I'm sure it is, because it costs fuck all to make, and then they make loads of money at the box office. But I don't like knocking actors. However, I will admit they're probably the worst acted out of all of them. And there's like, they all look like they were meant to sort of look like a famous person, but they couldn't get the famous person, so they hired people who sort of like resembled them. So I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. Anyway, yeah, Saw 5 is the worst one for these reasons. It's bland. The traps aren't memorable to me, really, apart from the pendulum and the walls closing. But the pendulum just annoys me, really, because of the logic of it. And the walls trap is cool, but it's like the last 45 seconds of a hour and a half film that I was like, yeah. This film to me just doesn't really add anything worthy to make this film exist. I'd actually go so far to say this film feels more like a television series episode, in that it doesn't really have a beginning, it doesn't really have a middle, it doesn't really have an end. It's just filler to get the ending of the last film, Saw 4, into the beginning of the next film, Saw 6. It just feels like a TV episode to just like a fill in the blanks, and oh well, we don't, we need a game because otherwise this film would be 20 minutes long, and maybe if either Saw 6, well, I know it wouldn't work with them, but it just feels like that. It just feels like, well, we have a 20-minute thing we want to get through with, like how Hoffman became the apprentice and Strahm finding out and Hoffman killing Strahm, but we can't make that into an hour and a half film, so we'll put this game in it. It's not very interesting, and we'll just try and fill it out as much as we possibly can to get to that 90-minute runtime. So, yeah, I don't love Saw 5. It's at the bottom for those reasons. I don't hate it like I know a lot of people do, but I certainly wouldn't call it like memorable, or like there's anything about it that comes to my mind when thinking about this franchise, apart from maybe the walls closing in. Other than that, I don't even really remember the pendulum all that much until I was watching the film and I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing that happened. So yeah, that's just my opinion. Anyway, next one, number 9, and that is Saw 7.
Since the beginning, you have watched others suffer. Now it is your turn to play. Game over. The last piece of the puzzle is you.
Now, Saw 7 is quite a funny film to me because it was Saw 3D. It captured the whole like bandwagon, let's make everything fucking 3D, and that'll make everybody want to watch our film if we just slap the words 3D on it. Some films did it well. Some films, were entertaining enough by themselves with or without the 3D. Other films were not at all, in any way, shape or form, entertaining enough with or without the 3D. This one is a bit in the middle. Like, I don't hate it. I like because this one was made to be the final Saw. It's actually called Saw: The Final Chapter, and there's been 3 films since. So yeah. Anyway, I don't hate it. I like Cary Elwes coming back. I'm a big Cary Elwes fan. Really like seeing him back as Dr. Lawrence Gordon. I like the reveal that he was an apprentice. I like the reveal that he was the one who surgically, did the traps with, like, putting the key behind the guy's eye in the Venus flytrap, sewing the mouths and eyelids shut for, I can't remember, I'm going to assume it's see no evil, hear no evil. I don't know what the trap is called, to be sure. I like that twist, and I like the ending where he obviously locks Hoffman back in the bathroom from the first film that he was trapped in. And there are some traps I think are memorable, but I don't know. Like I think the Lover's Triangle trap, that's pretty good. Actually, that's probably one of my favourite ones, just because it's absolutely fucking mental, and it does lead to question how the hell did he, Hoffman, put all 3 people in there, put all of that there in a very public place and nobody noticed. But I feel like the idea of it was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I just like that trap. But I think the idea of it's pretty cool. I think it's probably, I wouldn't call the acting brilliant, but it was better than Saw 5 in my opinion. And yeah, there's the really stupid bit where the woman's like half-assedly just smacking the window with a handbag like a fucking idiot. But I just like it. I don't know why. It's just a trap that I think I've always thought, that's pretty cool, I guess. It was actually one of the first traps I ever saw. I saw a clip of it in YouTube when I was like 13, I think. And I was just like looking at horror film trailers and stuff, and in that it was like Saw 7, this trap. I was like, oh fuck it, what's this? And I was like, oh okay, alright. And then I watched the first film based on that. So I guess there's a bit of nostalgia for it, because it's the first thing of like Saw I ever really watched. But again, it's one of those things where it's a cool trap and it's a cool scene, but it's 3-4 minutes out of a 90-minute long film. Seeing Cary Elwes back again, that was entertaining, but the trap, the game itself isn't great. It's better than Saw 5, but it does, especially the ending though with Joyce, leads into the question what exactly John's rules are. Because John says, I don't like killing innocent people. They died. Well, first of all, he says, I don't kill anyone, which, I mean, that's just not true. But you can look at his warped perception and you're trying to go, okay, how does this crazy person see it? And if you blink, you squint, you can sort of see what he's getting at, in that he doesn't obviously kill them himself. And when he says, I give everybody a chance to live, again, it's not entirely true, because sometimes it's like they live or they live, and it's a third party who chooses. It's not actually up to them. They don't have a test. It's up to somebody else. You could argue that it's up to them to make the argument to why they should live, like with the carousel trap. And again, he says everybody has a chance to live, which is true. Everybody has a chance. It just might not be up to them, and not everybody is going to live. However, with Joyce, it was such a mean trap, because she didn't deserve it. She didn't know that Bobby was lying. She didn't, she didn't do anything wrong, and her fate was completely out of her hands, and she didn't do anything wrong. And the consequence of failing was really fucking mean. She was burnt to death, and it was just like, she didn't deserve that at all in any way, shape or form. She did nothing wrong. Her fate was completely out of her hands. You can't go, she lacked the will to live. No, she didn't do anything wrong. It was all Bobby and everybody else. She did nothing wrong. And it's not like they didn't know that, because even in the audio recording, they admit that. They say who you've also deceived. So it's like, so why is she there? Is it just meant to be motivation for him? Because if it's just motivation, why not make the twist that she's not actually at risk? It's Bobby is, and it's like, why are you putting this woman who's literally done nothing wrong in such a horrible situation where her fate's not in her hands, and when Bobby fails, which he does, she then burns to death? It's just really not a nice thing at all, and it's just a really horrible sort of like, makes you overly question what is John's point. What is the point of any of this? Why at this point it is just you killing people. There's no lesson learned. There's no, oh, he helped me. Oh, he made me realise how valuable my life is. It's like, no, you just did this for some strange reason. And also, again, the whole 3D thing. The shots in this film, which are meant to be 3D, aren't very good. I can only think of two which are effective. The rest are just like, why? What is that meant to make me go, oh my god, it's a fucking handsaw being thrown at my face? Ooh, like, I don't get it. I don't get what the point of the 3D thing was, aside from slapping it on the poster and hoping some people went to see it. And also because of that, because they used fake blood that was meant to look better in 3D, when you watch it in 2D, which obviously most people who have watched it have probably watched it in, the fake blood is pink, and everything that is meant to be red looks pink, and it is quite distracting after a while because it looks like pink paint. It doesn't look like blood at all, and it just does come across as goofy eventually, where people who are like injured have just like this weird dry looking pink liquid shit coming out of them. So yeah, I do have positives. I like the public execution trap. I like seeing Carrie Elwes back again, even if it's for a short period. I like the twist. I like the ending. And the game as a whole is better than the previous one. And Bobby, to me, is an okay person to follow because he isn't horrible, but he also is deceiving people. He is lying to people. But at the same time, he is somewhat-ish doing some good with it. And it is that sort of more morally grey area than some other people who are just, you know, terrible fucking people. But it was just the whole Joyce thing really does make you feel like, okay, so what is the lesson here? This is just horrible and unnecessary and goes against your moral code. And I like to think that was Hoffman, that wasn't in John's design for that to happen like that. Maybe it was meant to be a trick when it was John, and Mark was just like, no, fuck it, she can die. I like to think that because I like it's not defending the film, is I find the character of John Kramer as Jigsaw really interesting. He is my favourite horror film villain. And I do think that the writers of these films and trying to make a shock value sort of like just ignore what his moral code actually is. And though obviously he is a psychopath, he does have a tumour in his brain which probably affects his judgment. It does sort of make you feel like well, what actually is the point with a lot of these things? So I like to think that was Hoffman's design and not John's, that the trap actually killed Joyce in the end. Anyway, again though, the 3D's bad. The one weird thing about this film though is that has made it just quite strange is that the late great Chester Bennington's in this film, rest in peace, and obviously knowing he has in real life passed away, it does make the scene feel very. Knowing that he has passed away does make the scene very sort of. I don't know how I'd word it, but it does affect it in a not in a good way. And I can see at the time though why it was a fun cameo, I guess. I mean, the scene's really graphic. It's really not nice. His character's not a nice person. But I guess you could see why people who like Linkin Park, people who like Saw, would have been like, that's quite funny. But now it's strange to watch, even more so than it probably was in the first place. So I don't know. It's just a strange way for this film to be, brought up that Chester Bennington is in it. May he rest in peace, really. And it was, really bad thing what would happen with him. And he's a really good case why, you should look after your mental health, and you should reach out for help if you need to. And I know this is a strange path to be going down when talking about Saw films, but that's just what Saw 7 ends up making you really think about when watching this really horrific scene. So I don't know. It is quite a strange thing. Unfortunate, so I guess if he wanted to do it, if he liked these films, it's one. If he was happy with it, then great. That's all I can say really. If this made him go to the cinema and was happy that he was in a Saw film, even if it was in a scene like the scene that it is, I can't argue with that, and fair enough to him, and I'm glad he did it then in that case. But it does just make the scene feel very strange if you were to watch the film. But like I said, there are things to take away from this film which are positive. Like I said, if this is what Chester Bennington wanted, then great for it. Really great for him that he got to do it. It's great to see Carrie Elwes back as his really iconic character. And there are some okay traps, but the fake blood, the stupid 3D effects which do nothing, the whole thing with Joyce is just I don't know. I wouldn't call it a good ending to the franchise as a film. The last scene I would consider a good ending, but not a good last film. And the massive lack of Tobin Bell as well, who is the reason why the franchise is so iconic, does affect this film negatively as well. That he's only got two or three new scenes. He has like a few snippet things that are not really scenes, but he's barely in anything. And one of them is just him at a book line vaguely threatening Bobby, and it's just like, okay, that's not a really good last scene for what was going to be a last appearance of this character. I feel like they should have given a lot more focus to Jigsaw as a character and his legacy, and how he's still pulling the strings from beyond the grave, and how his games are still happening than this film did. It did sort of try to do that with Bobby, and what he claimed he had survived, and how John met him, but I still just feel like he was way too absent from this film, considering the fact it was meant to be the last one. Anyway, That's enough for Saw 7. Few positives, but still, you know, a lot of negatives, unfortunately. And in 8th place is Saw 4.
Hello, Officer Rake. You have witnessed your colleagues disappear. Tonight, I give you the opportunity to save everyone. Welcome to your rebirth.
2 officers are missing. I am just curious as to why. Take off the mask and put your hands in the air.
The games have just begun.
He's being recruited.
I am still among you.
You gotta save yourself.
My work will continue.
Now, I don't hate this film. There's things about it which I do actually like. Like, it's great to see Donnie Wahlberg back, even though he's just doing this for the whole film, really. But, I don't know. It's nice to see him. And I quite like the character of Griggs. But, again, it's just this sort of thing where his trap is quite vague. And I wouldn't really quite call it fair. I mean, I get the whole point of, like, he doesn't really appreciate his life. He's so obsessed with saving everybody that he does reckless things. He's so obsessed with having to solve every case, ignoring his family. His wife, like, leaves to go to her mum's because he's just never there. And I understand that, and also, like, him lashing out and punching obviously, what a horrible person who abuses his kid and deserves to be punched. But he could have gotten sued from that and made the situation worse by doing that. And Hoffman has to lie for him to get that dismissed. So, yeah, I don't think he deserved to be tested. Or if he did, he shouldn't have been the main focus of a test. And the ending was quite vague of what he was or wasn't meant to do. It was the whole point of don't save people, don't save that crazy lady, because she would then try to kill him because of all the evidence of her being a criminal. Don't save put the motel owner in the trap because he's a rapist and he does some horrible things, beating women half to death, and it's just really fucking not a nice guy at all in any way. You've then got the abusive parents, and they had their own test which didn't really have anything to do with him as such, but I don't, like I said, I don't hate it. There are things which I do think they did well, like the introduction of Strahm and Sanchez. I like the twist with it being, this is the one that shows that Hoffman is the apprentice. And I like the twist that the start of the film is actually the ending of the film. Although that scene actually chronologically takes place in Saw 6, which is just whatever at that point. But I like that twist, and I like the twist that Hoffman is the one who is the other apprentice to John, other than Amanda. Again, no, I don't think Griggs deserved to be tested. I feel like this is the one where the rules are the most vague and stretching, and it does come across like I don't think it's very fair at all. I think even for John Kramer and Jigsaw, this is a bit extreme. This is a bit like, what is the point? And again, it's like everybody has a chance to live, but almost everything he has to do is leave people to die, a bit like in Saw 3. However, again, I'm guessing their chances, they could live. He could save them. they could argue why they should be allowed to live. So I don't know. I'm guessing that if you were to try and defend the character of John Kramer, I'm guessing that's the warped perception. I just do think this film is the most vague of the franchise, and I do think it's overly complicated for such a simple story that it's trying to tell. And the other twist with the whole film being set at the same time as Saw 3, which obviously has made more of the twist because of the opening. You think John's dead, but it's actually revealed throughout the rest of the film he was still alive at that point. Also doesn't work so well because it makes the cliffhanger ending of Saw 3 feel very redundant, because that whole ending with Jeff and then Lynn dying and Jigsaw saying, "I want to play a game," it's revealed that Jeff was shot to death 10 seconds later by Strahm because he pointed his gun at Strahm, not knowing that Strahm was a police officer. Strahm didn't know who he was, so Strahm shot at him. And it is just like, well, it does make the ending to Saw 3 feel a bit pointless, where it's like, if you want to find your daughter, Jeff, you'll have to play a game. And then it ends on that shot of Lynn's exploded head, and then it just cuts, and it's like, oh my god, what would the next one be? And then it turns out that the next one is set at the same time, and then Jeff just immediately dies, so Hoffman to then rescue the kid and take all the credit, even though he was part of it. Just a very bizarre thing, really, and I do feel like it just makes the ending to Saw 3 feel kind of pointless. But I don't hate it, and there are things I like about it. As mentioned, I like the twist with Mark Kaufman. I like Griggs as a character, so I like watching him throughout the film, even though the whole game itself is a bit confusing. I like seeing Detective Matthews, played by Donnie Wahlberg, back. Saw 4 as well, though, has one of the other positives. I like going more into John's backstory with Cecil, the whole Jill having a rehabilitation clinic and what Cecil ended up doing to her and the consequences of that, and how it helped spiral John down this path of doing what he does. So I also like that about the film. I like the character Art Blank, the lawyer. I actually quite like him as well. And I do like the idea of the trappies to not save them in the 90 minutes because you keep running through unsecured doors. You could just put everybody at risk by acting foolishly and not really focusing on what the situation is. I just feel like the whole thing could have been handled better and just not being as vague and as cruel as the whole thing was for such a minor flaw for a Jigsaw victim to have. He does, like I said, he's obsessive. He ruins his own life by not paying attention to it. He does take risks by running in. He does do things like lash out when he shouldn't, but I just still feel like it was just a bit mean. Anyway, so that's Saw 4 number 8. Jigsaw is number 7.
The blood under the fingernails of our victim, John Kramer, the Jigsaw killer.
That's impossible.
It was a game. Games can be won. It's Jigsaw.
No, it's not creepy at all.
now. Now, number 7, Jigsaw. I have quite a bit of nostalgia for this film. It was the third one I ever watched. I watched 1, 2, Jigsaw came out, and I went straight to Jigsaw. And I obviously then watched all the others. Jigsaw, to me, though, is a strange one. Because it's trying to be like this nostalgic love letter to the Saw franchise, whilst also like being its own new thing. And like, is it going to set up its own sequels, which it then didn't? So it's quite a confusing film now by itself, to sort of like what actually really is the point of this film, because the whole advertising of this film was Jigsaw is back, John Kramer's come back from the dead somehow, and obviously no, although I never really believed that, but the film plays out like that is going to also be the case. And even though these films are famous for twists, so you should expect the rug pulled out under your feet, maybe him being alive was that, even though again you see him die in Saw 3, you see his autopsy in Saw 4, so I didn't believe that was going to be the case. It was such a strange way this film was marketed. And then obviously you do have the twist where, oh my god, John is alive, and you see him and you have a proper long sequence with him. However, it's then revealed that was 10 years ago, and this medic guy called Logan was actually John's first assistant and is playing this game set now, and he was like the Jigsaw, apart from Cecil, the trap, in Jigsaw, apart from the whole Cecil Adams thing, was what made was the first game. And it's confusing because it's so extravagant and so fucking designed out and crazy, fucking oh my god, there's so much stuff going on. And then he goes back to the dungy dirty thing, and then builds back up to becoming more and more extreme. Obviously, that's because this film came out afterwards, so they were like, how do we one-up the other ones? Oh, we'll do all of this crazy shit. And then logically, it doesn't really make all that much sense that his traps started off being super fucking extreme, and then got less extreme, and then went back to being extreme. However, I don't hate it. I like the barn setting. I like how this film's filmed. It's much cleaner looking than all of the other ones. It looks great, high definition, well filmed, a lot of cool shots. Obviously, Tobin Bell's great in it, and seeing him again was brilliant. And I like how they sort of learnt the lesson from Saw 7, when that was going to be the last one. It's like, why isn't he in it more? This one has him in it more, despite the twist. At least he's still in the film. And I don't hate the twist with Logan itself, because I do think it makes sense that John would have more apprentices, and I do think it makes sense he wouldn't tell them all about each other, and there would be ones that were kept hidden. But at the same time, it does just make this film feel like it was tagged on for the sake of being tagged on. It does make the film feel a bit more redundant now that the character of Logan has never been addressed since. Didn't have a sequel. There is no Jigsaw 2. It's just this thing that just sort of happened. And the whole nostalgia bait thing where you've got all of his traps from the previous ones, where you've got all of his traps from his previous films made by his super fan Eleanor, and it's just and then obviously the whole way this film was marketed is him being back, him actually being in the film, and then the whole twist. I can see why a lot of people hated the twist with Logan, because it does make the whole thing feel a little bit like a slap in the face. It does let down expectations, and the whole thing of Logan, though I don't hate it, if you really were expecting the return of Jigsaw, and you just end up with him saying, you have two choices, scream or don't, and then I speak for the dead, and closing the door. I can see why that is a very underwhelming ending, and like I said, it's made worse by the fact this film has never been acknowledged again in any way, really, outside of itself. Like, apart from Spiral, obviously, as well, this film is very sort of standalone. Logan has never been brought up again. He wasn't brought up in Spiral. He wasn't, apart from, I guess you could argue vaguely, maybe, when they said another Jigsaw copycat. But they would have been talking about the policeman he framed, not him. I don't know. It is a bit strange to me. You got these two stories going on with him, and then you got the game. It follows that trend again, where there's two things happening. But then it does the whole time twist thing, and it's the third film to do that now. The first one was Saw 2, then it was Saw 4, now it's this one, and it's just like, I don't know. I can see why people didn't like it. I personally don't hate it. I get enjoyment from it. I like how it's filmed. It's the best looking Saw film. Seeing Tobin Bell back again is obviously a good thing, just because he's great. But I do feel like, in the benefit of hindsight, this film should have been called Saw something, given some form of subheading, and the name Jigsaw for the film would have been much better suited going to Saw X, because that film actually is about Jigsaw. He is the main character of that film. There's no switcheroo ending, oh, actually, no, it's this, that, and that was years ago, and this is happening now. That film was all just focused on him. So the name Jigsaw going to a film where the twist is, no, he's still dead, no, it's just somebody else. And him saying, I'm trying to see if I'm as worthy as Jigsaw, when he's really not, is just, I can see why people hated it. I personally don't, but I genuinely can see why people hated the ending to this film. And I also thought the whole laser thing was a bit fucking much. But, like I said, though, Tobin back, best looking one. Some cool traps, like I like the chains on the walls and them being dragged to circular blades with buckets on the head. The whole spinning spiral thing I like, because it's the design of his spiral that he's had on his Billy the Doll puppet, that is at the crime scenes. So I like that, but I do just feel like it was a bit, I can see it's underwhelming, and it was left in this tug-of-war position where it's like, nostalgia bait, set up something new, nostalgia bait, set up something new, nostalgia bait, set up something new. And I do think that negatively affected the film, and I do think in hindsight Jigsaw would have been a much better name for Saw X than for this film, because this film really isn't about Jigsaw at all, really. It's just sort of, it's about his shadow that he's left, but I wouldn't exactly say it's about him. And in sixth place, we have Saw 3. There's a lot of things I like about this one. It does sort of feel like a conclusion to a trilogy, although it ended up very much not being. And yes, it does have a bit of a cliffhanger ending. However, it does feel like it ends a story that the first three films were telling with the character of John Kramer. although it was later expanded upon again with more in like Saw 4, with his backstory with Jill and the whole abortion clinic and all of these things. Saw 3, though, the problem is with it, again, this is the one where it really does start to go into like the fate no longer being in their hands and it being in the hands of someone else. In this case, the character of Jeff. Now, I like Jeff as a character, and I really do get the plot of the point that they're trying to do with the plot of this film, and I do think it's quite good. And I also, you can argue that they could live. They still have a chance. It just might not really be up to them. It's up to Jeff. And maybe they could also make an argument to why they should live. And that could be Jigsaw's warp logic. And the traps, the things themselves, like the freezing room, the pig thing was a bit gross. And obviously the rack is horrible, but is very iconic to the franchise. There are things I like about it. And obviously having Tobin Bell in it's great. Amanda has a lot of time to shine in this one, which is great because you really get to see what she's like as a character now. Once the twist, in Saw 2 that she's one of his apprentices, you get to really see what her character's like. And I really like Shawnee Smith, who plays her in this film. And it is good to see how her mental state has gone back to seriously deteriorating. She just loses the plot at the end, which is also later to be revealed partly because of a fucking hostage note, ransom note that Mark Hoffman gave her, but her involvement with the whole Cecil Adams thing. I think the worst thing about this film is how just fucking gross it is. Like, it is probably the most graphic Saw film. Like I said, the rack is brutal. It's iconic, and as a concept is quite good, but it is very, and it is a lot, and it isn't even the worst part of this film. Obviously, the most famous thing about this film is the whole craniotomy sequence, which is just fucking gross. And it almost didn't get an age rating because of this film. And the only way it could was if they made it medically accurate, because their argument was, if it's medically accurate, it's no more graphic than what you would see in part of like a medical program, which, yeah, there's an element of truth to that. However, just watching this 5-minute sequence where you see someone's flesh removed from their head, you see a bit of their skull fucking removed, and then you see their fucking brain, because they have a tumour and it's pressing against the skull, so they do that to relieve the pressure. It's just fucking gross to see just for 5 minutes in a film. It isn't a medical documentary, and yes, it is Saw, and yes, Saw's graphic. However, just watching this painfully long medical procedure just fucking happen is just like, what is this? Why is this scene like this? When you watch films, horror films, you don't normally just expect to see a whole sequence about a fucking surgery. Like, it's just such a strange scene that to just sit through, and I don't know, but yeah, it certainly leaves an impression. But it is the most gross because of it, because of the whole fucking pig thing as well. That's disgusting. Like I said, the rack is brutal. I would call this one the most graphic Saw film because there's nothing cartoonish about it. There's nothing over the top about it. The effects look extremely realistic. And because of the whole, like I said, craniotomy sequence, that's just painfully long. It does make this film the most graphic and probably the hardest to sit through if you've got a weak stomach. However, like I said, I like the story it's trying to tell. I like the point of the film. I like the lesson, I guess, it's trying to teach. That Jeff's just destroying what's left of his life and the lives of, you know, his daughter and his wife. And I like that she's become unfaithful. She's started taking just silly amounts of antidepressants, and it's just affecting her job as a surgeon and arguably putting people's lives at risk because of it. So I like the lesson, I guess, the point of the game, but it, like I said, it does go down that road of it no longer really being in their hands. However, I like to sort of defend them, not because I defend the films individually, just because I like to try and I really like the character of John Kramer, and I like seeing more of him, and the more a Saw film has him in, the more I like it, because I think he is by far the most interesting aspect of the franchise. Tobin Bell as him is genuinely iconic to me. It is one of the most iconic characters and iconic performances, in my opinion. So him being in this a lot and seeing what his mindset is and getting to see a little bit more of his backstory. Like, this is the first appearance of Jill Truck, his ex-wife, in just a little bit of a flashback sequence where he's daydreaming when things are going on. So yeah, it obviously wasn't meant to be the last one, but it does feel like a conclusion to the trilogy of his character, even though his character then later appeared in other ones and more of his backstory was delved into, and then obviously Saw X is all about him. I like the film for that, and I like the film what it does with Amanda as well. And it was written by Leigh Whannell, who helped create the franchise, write the first one, and played the character of Adam. And Adam makes a small appearance in this film as well, and you get to see his cause of death, which is a shame because I like Adam. I'm sad he died, but it was just nice to see more of him and more of a conclusion to, okay, what actually sort of like happened with him, because you just assume because of Saw 2, seeing his dead body, that he just died in there because he was left in there. You didn't know that Amanda came back and finished him off. I like that, and I like the character of Lynn as well. I actually like the character of Lynn. So there are things about this film I like. It's just the most graphic one by quite far. And there are things about other Saw films that I like more than this one, obviously, because it's not that high on my list. But this is, for me, one of the good ones. There's more positives for this film, in my opinion, than negatives. We're going right into the positives, the ones I actually really do like now. Anyway, in 5th place, we have Spiral from the Book of Saw.
Jigsaw copycat.
This is gonna go sideways fast.
I'm a left spin like a spiral.
All available units, officer down.
That was just a diversion to get us out of the precinct. I need everyone on this case. He could be anywhere. He could be anyone. We're gonna tear this city apart.
I'm a left spin like a spiral.
Hello, Detective Banks. When was the last time you saw your father?
I do like this film quite a lot, and it is funny that there's a Saw film which stars Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson. Like, it is quite a funny thing to see. And it's made even more funny by the fact this was actually Chris Rock's idea, and he's the one who pitched this film to the studio and is the one who got it made. I like this film. I like the plot of it. It's very straightforward because there's only one film, and the villain's motives are quite clear, and there's no accomplices that we know of, and I'm assuming there's not any, that you sort of, there's nothing muddying it. There's no sort of having to defend his, like, oh, you lied, or you lie about your rules, or there's no having to jump through hoops about what his moral code and actually is, and if he's, you know, just a hypocrite or not. Like, it's very clear cut. I like him as a villain, William. I really do. I think he is one of the... I prefer him to Logan, in all honesty. The only thing is, though, when the first teaser trailer came out, as soon as I saw him, I went, yeah, he's going to be the killer. Because it's like, oh, you're the new guy, yeah? Yeah, you're the new guy. And I was like, oh, it's going to be the fucking new guy. And it's going to be because the police did something to him when he was younger. And he's now joined the police to get back at corrupt policemen. And that turned out to be the exact plot of the film. So I called it from the first 5 seconds of a teaser trailer. I just saw him and was like, oh, I know where this is going. It's going to be him. And it was him. And I knew it was also going to be him when watching the film, when it's like, oh my god, he's died. But it didn't show his death. And when a Saw franchise doesn't show a character's death, when a franchise like Saw, where the whole fucking point of it's like, how much warped deaths can we create with like these weird traps? When it doesn't show his death, it's like, yeah, he ain't actually fucking dead. So I called that, I saw it coming, and what do you know, that was the twist. And whilst we're just talking about negatives quickly, I feel like the worst thing about this film is they're stuck in this thing where the director, Darren Lynn Bousman, said it's not a Saw film, it's not Saw 9, it's just set in the same universe, and the main villain of this film is inspired by the Jigsaw Killer. The problem is with that is, obviously Saw X, to show that this film is considered to be Saw 9 by the fact they call it Saw X, Saw 10, you know, X is 10 in Roman numerals. But the problem is with this film is, whilst they're trying to distance themselves away from Saw, it's that acknowledging the fact that the people who go to watch this film are Saw fans. And because it's directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, it does feel like a Saw film. It's edited and directed the same way the first 7 were, with like the crazy editing, the panic, the shaky cam and all of that. It feels like a Saw film. And though it's a lot cleaner than the Saw films are, and it looks higher budgeted, however, it still just has a Saw feel to it. And it knows the only people, even though it's trying to distance itself away from Saw, it also knows that the people who are going to watch it are Saw fans. So it does all of these Saw things, like, even though it's not Tobin Bell, the voice, whenever the TV set plays or the audio recordings played, it says, hello, name, why they're there for, what symbolic thing they have to do to themselves, and then ends with live or die, make your choice, which obviously is what each Jigsaw explanation was. And though, again, it's not Tobin Bell, and I just want to say, actually, the voice is really fucking creepy. Like, it's not as good as iconic as Tobin Bell's, but I will give it credit. It is really creepy in and of itself, and I will give it a lot of props for that, because it actually generally is like, oh, that's really creepy. And the other thing as well to add to this film feeling like a Saw film is that it ends with the twist music, the Hello Zep theme, the main theme from the Saw films, and it's even called Zep 9. So for the director to say this isn't, we don't consider this Saw 9, this is Spiral, its own thing, you know, having all of these things from the Saw films in it, including Hello Zep, and actually calling the music itself literally Zep 9, also adds to that whole thing of why this film sort of struggles a bit and sort of feels like it's having a bit of an identity crisis, is how I would word it, with trying to be its own thing, but also knowing that the people who are paying to watch it are Saw fans, so it's stuck in that bit of a difficult situation. And then they obviously have the whole traps, and that obviously is to make it, because it is a Saw film in that regard. They still have the traps, they still have the pig mask. Even though it's not Billy the Doll, they still use a puppet, and they go, oh god, he thinks he's Jigsaw, he's using a puppet now. It does make you then feel like, okay, so where's Tobin coming in? Where's Billy the puppet? You know, and then they don't appear, and it's like, oh, okay. And you know, the Spiral, the film's called Spiral, it's Jigsaw's Spiral. And because of this, they take so much inspiration, like the pig mask, the hood and everything. You expect him to be in it, and he's not. And even though you can go understand why he's not, apart from like photos and references, because he's trying to be his own film, and you do get logically why he's like that. Because if he is inspired by the Jigsaw Killer, he's going to do things which are the same, and he is very open about the fact that he is inspired by, you know, John Kramer. So, and I understand that, but at the same time, you then do think, is he going to be in it at all? And he's not. And because they make so many references to the other Saw films and try and make it feel like a Saw film, when he's then not in the film, it is a bit disappointing. And I know they wanted to put him in it at one point, and they considered it. Either him singing a Johnny Cash song for the end credits, which I don't know how that would have gone down, and they called, I don't want to do that because it's too gimmicky, and I can understand that because that would have been quite gimmicky. You know, they also then considered having him be in the end credit scene, in a flashback scene where it turns out he's the one who made, I think he's called Mr. Snuggles or something, the pig puppet that he uses you know, in the videos. He would have been the one who gave it to William, and I feel like that would have been a really cool scene to actually have. And I am disappointed that that one wasn't in the film, because at the end credits, because I feel like that actually could have worked quite well to tie it into the bigger picture of Saw a bit more than this film did. However, I do like this film. I like the traps. I like Chris Rock in it. I like Chris Rock a lot. You know, even though he isn't my first choice for a tough guy police detective, he does play the role really well. Samuel L. Jackson's obviously Samuel L. Jackson. He's great, and just seeing him in a Saw film at all is fucking amazing. I really want to know what they said to him, if he had ever watched the Saw films or anything like that. That was, I love that fact that he's in it, and I do like William as a villain, and I like the things that he does differently as well. I do appreciate it, even though it is a mixed bag of like, well, you're making me want more of what I know because you keep referencing it. I do like the differences between him and Jigsaw. I like his creepy voice thing that the voice messages he sets out. Although I don't think anything is as creepy as the ending to the trailer, which to me is actually probably the creepiest trailer I've ever seen. It really did leave an impression on me when I saw it.
Hello, Detective Banks. When was the last time you saw your father?
Though I don't think there's anything in the film itself that's as creepy as that, I actually do consider this one to actually be actually quite creepy and quite scary in quite a few places. So I appreciate the film for those things, and I do enjoy the film quite a lot, and I like the whole police detective sort of like Seven Zodiac sort of vibe that they do at least try to give this film. So I do appreciate it for those things. And it does, as of right now, it is the most standalone out of the Saw sequels. And like I said, even though it does make a lot of references and does fit to other Saw things and feels like a Saw film, it is the most standalone and is the most its own thing. So I do respect it for that. And then in 4th place, we have Saw 6.
You think it's the living that will have ultimate judgment over you.
Why are you doing this? What do you want?
Because the dead will have no claim over your soul.
No, I'm not gonna do it! I'm not gonna do it!
But you may be mistaken. But I am still among you. When faced with death, who should live versus who will live are two entirely separate things.
If it's Halloween, it must be Saw.
You will be put to the test.
Saw 6.
He helped me.
I like Saw 6 quite a lot. I really like the game. I really do. I like the whole point behind it. I really like the themes of the film as well. I really do enjoy this one. I like the whole thing of this film where you have the character of William Easton, who is an insurance person who does medical insurance. And I live in England where we have the NHS, so you don't have the same thing over here as you do in America, where you have to pay for everything and you have to try and get insurance to, you know, to cover you. Because people don't like insurance, people don't like car insurance, people don't like home insurance, people don't like life insurance, people. And because it's, you know, they don't trust them. And the notion in England to actually have to have that for your health as well is it is fucking weird, because it's fucked up. And it's fucked up that they tried to scam you and fuck you over. When it's your health, it's not your car. It's not actually. Well, if you read the fine print, this is someone's life, and the whole point of this film where William denies covering John Kramer a treatment and saying if you go and do it anyway, you'll be dropped, is like fucking mental, because this is someone's life. You know, this is something which could save them, and you're not letting them do it under your coverage, and then you're not letting them do it by themselves either. And it's fucking weird. And I like the whole point of what John says as well, where he says you know politicians say it should be between someone's health should be between them and their doctor, the doctor and the patients. It should be between them, confidential. And he says it's not. What's up to them isn't between the patients or the doctors or even the government. It's up to the fucking insurance people. And it's true. If this is like, you know, he's having the conversations about his treatment, the conversations about his life, the conversations about what his life expectancy is or isn't, and what he should or shouldn't have treatment-wise, not with a doctor, not with a specialist, or not even with a fucking nurse. It's with an insurance person, because the insurance person is ultimately the one who's deciding what he is and isn't allowed, and what he should or shouldn't have, and that's just mental. And I like that the film, you know, talks about that, and it shows how fucked up the American health system, you know, healthcare really is. That this is how it's run. And William Easton, you know, and his team trying to con people out of paying, you know, their insurance. Like, there's the whole thing where the guy with the heart disease, he's gonna die if he isn't allowed this treatment. Though he's been paying premium coverage his whole life, paid every month on time, they're gone, well, you missed a bit where you had a tooth removed because of this, and it causes gums when you were like 17, and that can lead to gum disease, which then leads to heart disease. And it's like, what the actual fuck? Because you had a bad tooth when you're 17, you're going, you forgot to mention that, so we're not going to help you now. is fucking evil, and it causes him his death. And I like the point of the film. I like the whole thing with William Easton, and I like William Easton as a character because it goes back to that traditional sort of Saw where it's more black and white, and you know, he isn't a murderer in the sense that he doesn't go out and kill people directly. He doesn't sell drugs to people, but he is a scummy insurance person who is causing the deaths of people by his own actions. The only reason he didn't, allow John the treatment was because it would affect his yearly bonus at the end, essentially. And I like that. And like when there's the bit where he obviously during the game he yells, "This is a business." It's like, it shouldn't really be a fucking business. The fact that this is how it's all run is fucking crazy. I like the whole thing of the film, the whole message of it. And the thing is that I do like about his character, though, is I do actually feel like he learnt his lesson. Obviously, he's been making these decisions, who lives or dies, and though not as extreme in the sense that like the carousel thing, because obviously getting shot in the chest point blank with shotguns are much quicker cause of death than the thing he deals with. It's essentially what he's doing. He's denying people who could live life. There's so many people who are dead because of him. Didn't die just because of their disease they had or whatever issues they had. It's because he wouldn't cover them. He conned them in the end, essentially. And that's the point, is what this film is. And I like the whole symbolism of the game. Yes, again, it does go into the whole chance to live, will to live argument of like, is he actually following his own moral code? But again, you could look at it, well, they could live. It's just not everyone's going to live. 2 people in the chat on that thing could live, so they do have a chance to live. And it's also up to them for having a good argument to why they should live. And again, it's not as... It does lead to more holes with John's entire sort of way of doing things and his point and his code of honour, I guess you could call it. Whatever you wanted to refer to it as. But I still love this film quite a bit. I actually genuinely enjoy Saw 6. I genuinely think the traps are great. I feel like the violence is the right amount. I like the symbolism of what the whole point is. I like the John Kramer backstory and the scenes with William Easton. I like him as a character. And I like that. I do think he learnt his lesson, which is why the ending of the film is also so impactful. Because when he realises it's not his test and it's all in the hands of the wife and son of one of the people he got killed, the guy with the heart disease. I mean, yes, again, it does lead into question John's exact code himself, but I really like that sequence, and it's makes the ending quite, not sad, but like I do actually think he learnt his lesson. And when the son kills him with the acid, it does leave this sort of more of a thematic feeling to it, and like, that's not sad, but it makes it feel a lot more dark emotionally than it would just have been had he just been some fucker who failed his test. And I like it for that. I like John Kramer in this film, and obviously Tobin Bell's great as him. I really like what they do with Hoffman in this film. And yes, this is one of the films where it's 50-50, where half the film's the game, half the film's the policing. But I really also like the police stuff in this film. I like that Hoffman is the apprentice, and it's the FBI trying to prove it but not letting him on, but they think it. And when they do find out it's Mark, I like how he tries to kill them all quickly and then burns the building down to try and hide the evidence. But I also like that the ending with Jill, how she puts the reverse bear trap on him and doesn't actually give him a way to escape, so he breaks his hand to free it, and then puts the trap in the metal bar, the cage around the window of the door, so when it opens up the metal bars, it doesn't open all the way through. And I really do like that ending, and I like that twist. I really like this film, I really do, and I really like the both plots. I love the game, I love the police story in this film with the FBI and Hoffman, and I like the twist at the end. I really do like this film. Also, Devin Bostick's in it, which just makes it better.
Does owning this magazine make you a better person?
No.
Did it make you more popular at school?
Yes. No.
So, anyway, I really do enjoy 6. Anyway, third place is Saw 2.
Run!
Live or die, make your choice.
There's something that we're not seeing. You did this.
Open the door! There's nowhere to go! Where is he?
Oh, yes. There will be blood.
Obviously, Saw 2 is the first sequel of the franchise, and I actually quite like it. It really delves a lot more into the character of Jigsaw. It's the first time you really spend a lot of time with him, and it's the first time Tobin Bell gets to play the character a lot on screen. It's also the film which introduces the character of Eric Matthews, played by Donnie Wahlberg. Donnie Wahlberg has a very prominent role in this film. It also introduces the character of Griggs. It's also the film where you spend the most time with the character Alison Kerry. So I really enjoy this film. I like the game as well. I think the game's brilliant in the house with this slow acting poison. I really like the time twist at the end. I really like all the conversations between Eric Matthews and John, and how Eric just had to sit and listen and talk to him, but didn't. Obviously does what he does, and that gets him trapped, and it turns out the son had been there safe the whole time, in a safe. I also like the twist with Amanda, where it turns out that Amanda has become his apprentice and was actually the first on-screen character to do so. So I really like this film, and this one to me sets a lot of what this franchise would become. Like the character of John being very prominent, very influential, influencing other people to do certain things. And I really do like how it all plays out in the end. And I also love how this is the first one to really delve more into John's backstory. Obviously, you know from Saw 1, the twist at the end that he's dying of, he's the cancer patient, he's dying, and he's pissed off that people aren't grateful for their lives, hence why he does what he does. But at the same time, this one really delves into it more, like the suicide attempt, that I was alive and I wanted to live and I would teach other people to be grateful for their lives. I like how this film was the first one to really delve into that side of the character, and as I said, I love the twist at the end. I think that it is a really good twist. Not as good as the first film's twist, but I still do really like it. I like Donnie Wahlberg a lot in this film. I think he acts the character really well, and I think he was the perfect casting choice. And I like how you look at him and it's like, you're a nice policeman, you're good at your job, but he's actually, brutal and frames people. He gives false evidence. So I like that. Oh, you're actually not a nice person at all, but you're also trying to follow him for the right reason. His son's in danger, so he's even though he's not a nice person, you're still sort of rooting for him because you want his son to be safe. So I like how this film does do that really good moral grey area where it's the moral ambiguity of like the villain versus the hero of the whole thing, because it is not clear cut. It isn't you watching somebody who's a really nice running away from this truly, completely and utterly evil character. It's this essentially a really fucked up vigilante who becomes more villainous as you see the other things he does, but he's essentially that versus a corrupt cop. So it's this really weird clash where you're rooting for the corrupt cop because of another character, not because of him. If the son wasn't in play, the audience would probably be very impartial to who they want to live. So I really like that about this film. I really do enjoy Saw 2 as a film for all of these reasons. I love the moral ambiguity. I love delving more into John Kramer. I love this is the first one as well to really go into the policing. Saw 1 did have a bit of that, but this one is the real first one where the police were like, the police themselves were like a main presence of the films. I also love the bit where the police raid his where he's holed up in his warehouse, his factory, and when they're up the stairs and the little trap he has there again, it does leave into, oh, don't kill anyone. It's like, well, you did kill them, but again, he might not see it like that, because you could argue they walked into that. So I don't know, but I like that, and I just like the whole point of you get to see more of his point and his psychology and what his mindset is and what his beliefs are, and I really appreciate it for that. And I just love finally getting to see him properly and finally actually getting to know the character more and having him play him properly on screen. I really like the film for that, and I like the whole police aspect and how Eric tries to threaten him with certain things and even resulting in just beating him up and it not working. So I do enjoy the film. I really do like the twist at the end, and I do actually think for a sequel, considering how big of a film Saw was and how much of a modern horror classic that film is, I actually think, considering this was the first sequel to it, this does hold up quite well compared to it. It's not as good as it, but I do actually really enjoy Saw 2 as a film. And in second place, of course, we have Saw X.
Peace came upon me. No light, no sound.
The only thing I have not provided is your anesthetic. But trust me, you will want to remain alert.
Out of all the men to cheat, you picked John Kramer?
Please, don't hesitate. Place a big enough piece of your cerebral tissue into the glass enzyme tank. This will save your life.
So sleep, silent take.
This is not retribution. It's a reawakening. Live or die. The choice is yours.
I really, really, really loved Saw X, and though I usually don't go off of reviews to base my opinion because I don't trust critics. They'll give a film that I think is really great a shit score, but then they'll give something like Thor: Love and Thunder a good review. So I really do not trust critics. However, I was curious to what the critics would say about Saw X. I was blown away when I checked on my birthday what the reviews are, and it was critical acclaim essentially, and I thought, fucking hell, I mean, what a weird birthday present to get a Saw film with great reviews. So anyway, and then went to see the film a few days later, and I absolutely loved it. I think Saw X is brilliant. It is the first Saw film to treat the character of John Kramer as the main character. It's his story, it's about him, the main focus is on him, and I absolutely love it for that. It obviously tells the story about him going to New Mexico to get treatment for his brain cancer, but it turns out it's a scam, and him putting the people who scammed him in a game. And it's set between Saw 1 and Saw 2. I think it works brilliantly. I think it works really well by itself. Obviously, it's a good idea to have watched the Saw, at least the first one, beforehand, so you get the proper grasp of the franchise and the character that is John Kramer. However, it just works so well as its own thing and as a part of the franchise, because even though it's set obviously between 1 and 2, it has the other films in mind, and so the fan service moments, like seeing John Kramer drawing the plans of Iraq for Saw 3 was really cool. And then obviously the huge thing at the end with Mark Hoffman in the end credit scene, I absolutely fucking love that. I thought it was brilliant. It annoyed me a bit that they put his line, out of all the men to cheat, you pick John Kramer in the trailer. Obviously you don't know that's Detective Hoffman in the trailer, but I just feel like, and then they also put a clip from the bathroom in the trailer, and I do feel it's really weird when film companies put the ending of a film in the trailer, and even weirder when it's the end or mid-credit scene in the trailer. Sorry, it was the mid-credit scene, not end-credit scene. It doesn't have an end-credit scene. But I absolutely loved it. Despite of that, great fan service. The acting in it was fucking brilliant. The new characters are great. Obviously the return of Shawnee Smith as Amanda was more than welcome, and I'd go so far to say this is probably her best performance in the franchise as well, and I absolutely love to see her back. Obviously, like I said, Tobin Bell's the main character, and he gives his best performance as the character, and you really get to see a whole lot more of his mindset, what he lives, the rules he lives by. Just see him sort of in this new light where he's obviously the Jigsaw killer at the start of this film, but it's sort of funny to sort of see him just going about normal life outside of that. He's still trying to continue other things since becoming the Jigsaw killer, and I just found that dynamic really interesting to watch and seeing how all of it played out. I also love the whole dream sequence thing where with the orderly and you think it's a trap and then it's actually revealed to be a dream sequence, and I think that makes sense because I actually think that trap was too easy, where it's like break your fingers or have your eyeballs sucked out. I feel like out of all of his traps it's probably the easiest choice, and it made sense that it was a dream sequence. However, the way it was filmed, edited, was very nostalgic of those original Saw films, and I really liked the camera shot where the camera's with his finger, and then when it snaps upwards, the camera goes with it. I thought that was a brilliant editing choice. I love that. But it just as a whole, the film was brilliant and didn't feel like a Saw film either. I know it is a horror film, but I almost wouldn't call it a horror film. It feels more like something like Joker than it does the other Saw films. Seeing everything from his perspective, what his mindset is, why he feels justified doing what he does, and having people in his game which are such shitty people for doing what they're doing that you are just pretty much on his side. And it was great to see that, where he isn't treated as the villain in this story that this film's trying to tell. This woman is, because what she is doing is so fucking wrong and cruel, evil, deceitful, and you can't defend it in any way. She's already rich, she's just making loads of money, conning desperate people who are dying, and then letting them almost, they wouldn't continue their other treatment. Obviously they're terminal to be going to her, but they would stop going to the doctors for a while because they think they're okay, and then it turns out they're not okay. So what could have been 6 months to live has been turned probably into more like 3 months because of her lie. And I just like that the film chose to do that, in where they actually allowed John Kramer to blossom as the main character, because you are on his side for once properly. There's no real moral ambiguity in terms of like who you're rooting for. Obviously there's still a whole lot of moral ambiguity about what he's doing, how he's going about it, and what he makes them do to themselves. That's fucking still messed up, and you know, that's up to you if you think they deserve that or not. However, actually just seeing him being the main character and following him properly, I loved. And the character of Cecilia is really good, and she played really well, and I'll put the actress's name there. She's brilliant, and this is, I think, one of her first like really big projects. I'm not so sure, or at least in America it is. I know she's done you know, other projects. I can't remember where she's from, but I think she's done things there. So seeing, you know, her being in this very big worldwide theatrical released production is great, and I hope to see her in more things, because she's a really good actress and she's a really great villain. And it would also be cool if they do continue her story in another Saw film, because of the, you know, her undetermined fate that the film leaves off on. So I would, you know, you don't know if she's alive or dead at the end, and I would love to see that continue, and I would love more Saw films. I have nothing against a franchise making more films, as you know, if a film franchise is making money and the target audience are enjoying them, why not continue it? If they want to make Saw 11, 12, 13, 14, make a TV series, whatever, you know, do it. If it's good, why not? And Saw X is a really good indication that this franchise can be really good. It can be great. It can just be a generally great film, other than just an entertaining Saw film. And you know, I don't hate like I said, I don't hate the franchise. I don't think any of them are genuinely awful, because, as I said, I feel like most other horror franchises have worst films than this franchise does with Saw 5 by quite a lot. So that's my opinion. Obviously you could disagree. However, seeing, you know, this is way better than Saw 5. This is actually a really good film by itself in its own right. Not just, like I said, an entertaining Saw film. So to actually see that, it is, you know, refreshing that this franchise can achieve that. It can be more than just written off as what people have all sort of written this film franchise off since the second, third film. I really like Saw X, and I also, the theme by, I think he's called Charlie Clouser, I think he did the music for all of them. His rendition of the music for this film is great, and Zep X, as it's called, funnily enough, is probably, I wouldn't say it's the best version of Hello Zep, because I feel like the original one's the most iconic, and it's, you know, it's really good, but I really do like this version of the Zep theme, and it does feel very elevated and epic and powerful. So, yeah, and I also love the twist at the end of this one, where it's, you know, and I was thinking, who was the second player, you know, meant to be? And when the guy said that, and then obviously the room locks and the music starts playing, and it cuts to where he's like, "I'll die, you know, I'll die for you, baby," and Amanda's saying she'll burn you, but you just don't know it yet. And I love that ending to Saw X as well. I genuinely thought it was great, and it was great seeing Amanda in a new light as well, other than just victim to psychopath, and actually seeing her with a bit of middle ground where she's sympathetic to one of the contestants, and she's sympathetic obviously to the child who gets involved in it because of Cecilia. I genuinely think this film is genuinely brilliant, And as a film, it might be the best in the franchise. But I will put it in second place because I think it's brilliant. However, obviously, in number one, it does have to be Saw.
Hello, Dr. Gordon. I want to play a game. Your aim is to kill Adam. You have until 6 on the clock to do it.
The newspapers started calling him the Jigsaw Killer.
Looks like our friend Jigsaw likes to book himself front row seats to his own sick little games.
You can be the one who put me in this room!
We're gonna have to work together if we want to get out of here.
What is it, Sweepy? There's a man in my room.
What are you doing to them, you bastard?
Most people are so ungrateful to be alive. But not you. Not anymore.
To overcome something, you have to understand what a perfect engine it is. He doesn't want us to cut through our chains. He wants us to cut through our feet.
Sick bastard. Yes, I'm sick, officer.
There's a way out of here! There's a way out!
I'm sick of it all.
We're out of time.
Live or die. Make your choice.
Saw is genuinely one of my favourite horror films. I genuinely consider it a masterpiece in terms of horror. I love this film. The fact it was made by so little money, and had, you know, a new, relatively unexperienced director and writer, and the writer actually plays one of the characters in it. I just genuinely think the film is brilliant. It introduced so many things. It changed horror. However you view that as a good or bad thing is obviously up to you. But it's such an impactful film. And I think it deserves it. And I think regardless of what you think of the franchise afterwards, this film deserves a tremendous amount of praise. There are very few films which have impacted the film industry as much as this film did. Saw is such a strange thing that happened where it's just, like I said, a new writer, a new director created this concept with fuck all money to do it with, and walked away with one of the most influential films of all time. It's, you know, remarkable however you want to view it. And I love Carrie Elwes, and seeing Carrie Elwes in this, it's brilliant. Danny Glover's in it, and he's great in the role as well. And this is the film which introduced the world to Tobin Bell in the mainstream. He'd obviously been acting for years beforehand. However, this is the one which really, like, established him as an actor, a big actor, his own, you know, leading man sort of, however, you know, capabilities. I genuinely love this film, and the ending of this film, the twist, is so iconic. It is one of my favourite twists of all time. The Hello Zepp theme, as I've mentioned before, is brilliant. I absolutely love it. And the way he picks up the audio recording, plays it, and the way he says, "Oh, as everybody at the hospital used to call you Zepp," and the way the music starts to rise, and you see John Kramer get up, having pretended to be a dead body in the room. It's just fucking brilliant. The reverse bear trap, again, iconic. And that's what the Saw 0.5 was all about, the reverse bear trap. And they obviously knew how fucking good it was to bring it over into the main film itself as well. Saw 1 is genuinely, in my opinion, like, one of the most impactful films. I genuinely love the first Saw film. I genuinely consider it one of the best horror films ever made, one of my favourite horror films ever made, and a genuine masterpiece. James Wan and Leigh Whannell really deserve a lot of praise for this creation, and whatever they've gone and done recently, and James Wan and the whole Warner Brothers DC situation, where if you look at my channel you know what my stance on that whole situation is. But Saw, just as a creation between two, you know, young people who have a new career, and actually went out and made this, and with two, you know, famous people in it, and then just making a complete icon out of another actor in it, is just fucking incredible. I love the first Saw film, and it had to be number one, because as good as Saw X is, Saw X in no way would exist without this film. You know, I doubt, as much as I love Tobin Bell, I don't know where he would be career-wise without Saw. The character John Kramer, Jigsaw, is so iconic, and he is in my top 20 villains of all time, and because there's so many brilliant villains in all genres and all sorts, and I just think John Kramer as a character is just brilliant, and this film deserves the positive reputation that it has. It is genuinely fucking brilliant, and the amount of things introduced, particularly the character of John Kramer and the actor who played him, Tobin Bell, it's just masterful, and I really appreciate it for that. I really do love this film. So that is my ranking. I'm not going to go what their film scores are, because that's just a lot more to cover through. Maybe one day I'll review them individually, but as I've said, with Saw 5, Saw 4, there'd be like a lot of repeating myself with quite a few things. So I don't know what I'll do there, but yeah, that's my ranking of it. I don't hate this franchise as a whole. There's a lot about it I really like, and obviously some of it I really love as well. So yep, that's my opinion on it. Please let me know what yours are. If you agree, disagree. If you disagree, let me know. As long as it's respectful, that's absolutely fine. If you do agree, great, let me know about that as well. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please, you know, like it, share it, subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And obviously, if you want to check out my previous videos as well, I would also really appreciate that. And like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day with whatever you do next, even if it's just going to bed. I hope you all well, and thank you again for watching this video. Thank you. Goodbye.